He used me as a shield to cover up his sick obsession. I gave him my heart, he gave me betrayal. But when I died and woke up years before the wedding, everything changed. This time, I would give him my blessing and watch him break. They say people reveal who they truly are when they think no one's watching. But what if you're the one who's been blind the whole time? My name is Alina. I was the perfect wife, loyal, loving, supportive. Or at least I thought I was. To the world, I had it all. A wealthy husband, a beautiful house, and the kind of life that looked dreamy on paper. But my reality, it was a silent scream in a gilded cage. Adrian, my husband, the man I gave everything to, married me to hide a love so twisted it would shatter everything I believed in. He loved someone else, not just anyone. His adopted sister Livia. I didn't know. For years, I didn't know. I thought their closeness was just familial. After all, they were raised together. She was quiet, sweet, the kind of woman you couldn't hate, even if you tried. But I noticed things. The lingering glances, the way he rushed to her side before me, how she always stayed a little too long at our house, how she never dated anyone seriously. I ignored the signs. Because love makes fools of us all, and I was the biggest fool of them all. The truth finally broke me on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was coming home early from a business trip. Surprise him, I thought. Rekindle the spark. How ironic. I opened the door and stepped into a scene I can never erase. Adrian, his hands tangled in her hair. Livia, lips swollen, her blouse half undone. They didn't even notice me at first. I stood frozen, the umbrella slipping from my hand, clattering to the marble floor. When he looked up, it wasn't guilt on his face. It was annoyance. "You're not supposed to be home yet," he muttered, as if I was the one intruding. And then Livia cried. Not for me, not for what they did, but because he pulled away from her, like I was the one ruining their moment. Everything after that is a blur. Yelling, shattered vases, a car door slamming, tears streaming down my face as I drove aimlessly through the storm. I remember calling my best friend, sobbing into the phone, barely breathing, and then the headlights, a loud crash, darkness, and just like that I died. But fate had other plans. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in a hospital bed. I was in my old college dorm room. My hair was shorter. My phone was ancient. And the date, it was 6 years ago. The day before Adrian proposed. I stared at the calendar, numb. Was this a dream? A coma-induced fantasy? No, it was real. The emotions, the weight in my chest, the clarity in my mind. I'd been given a second chance, and this time, I wouldn't waste it. I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping the scratchy dorm blanket, staring at the little mirror on my desk. It was my 23rd birthday. The day before Adrian would show up at my apartment with a bouquet of white lilies and ask me to be his wife. The day I said yes to a lifetime of lies. But not this time. This time, I wouldn't be the fool in love. I spent the morning retracing everything, my schedule, where I met Adrian for lunch, the words he used. It all came back to me like a movie I'd watched 1,000 times. Only now, I knew how it ended. And that made all the difference. He texted me exactly at noon. Lunch at Savills. Got a surprise for you. A surprise, all right. One that would kill me slowly, painfully over 6 wasted years. But I smiled to myself, replying, of course. Can't wait. He thought he was still in control, still leading the dance. Let him think that. For now. At 1 o'clock p.m., I stood in front of the mirror again. this time dressed in a pale blue sundress, the one Adrian had always complimented. I looked innocent, soft, everything he wanted in a wife. But my eyes, they were different. Older, colder. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. He wasn't there yet. I ordered sparkling water and watched the doorway. And then he walked in. Adrian, charming, polished, with that effortless arrogance he wore like a tailored suit. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and those signature lilies. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he said. I smiled sweetly. "Thank you, Adrian. You always remember the little things." He looked pleased with himself. So confident. So shallow. We ate. We laughed. And then dessert came along with the ring. He knelt beside the table, drawing attention, like he loved to do. "Elena, will you marry me?" Every eye in the restaurant was on us. 6 years ago, I cried and nodded, overwhelmed with joy. This time, I smiled, took the ring and slipped it on, but in my heart, I whispered, "This is just the beginning of the end for you." Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I whispered to myself, "I won't fall for you again. I'll play your game better than you ever imagined." My plan was simple. Let him think he still owned me. Let him believe I was still the doting fiancé. And then watch him unravel. The next week, I began rewriting the future. Instead of quitting my internship to prepare for the wedding like I did before, I doubled down at the farm. I worked harder, stayed later, earned trust, built connections. Adrian noticed. "Are you sure you want to work so much?" he asked one night on a date. I leaned in with a soft smile. "I want to be the kind of wife you're proud of." He melted, but he didn't know what I really meant. I wasn't building a life with him. I was building one without him. Livia, of course, appeared soon after. Just like last time. "Hi, I'm Livia," she said sweetly at our engagement dinner. "I've heard so much about you." I watched her closely. Beautiful, delicate, the kind of woman people wanted to protect, and yet her hand lingered on Adrian's arm just a little too long. His eyes flicked toward her too often. I saw everything now, but I didn't confront. I smiled. Let them both hang themselves with the very rope they were hiding behind. The days blurred into weeks, and soon the wedding was 2 months away. Invitations had gone out, venues booked, dresses chosen. Everyone said I glowed with happiness. They didn't know I was smiling through grit teeth. I wasn't marrying for love this time. I was marrying to gather proof. To make them comfortable enough to stop hiding, and they were slipping already. One evening, Adrian asked me to come over to his house early. "Livia wants your opinion on some centerpiece designs," he said casually. Centerpieces. She wanted my opinion on the wedding. Centerpieces she'd pretend to care about. For the wedding she believed was beneath them both. Still, I agreed. "Of course. I'll be there at 5. I arrived earlier than planned. I wanted to test a theory. As I walked down the marble hallway to the living room, I heard whispers. "I can't stand watching her wear your ring," Livia said, voice trembling. "You won't have to forever," Adrian replied. "Just be patient. You know why this has to be done this way." My heart thudded, not from pain anymore but from vindication. I stood still, just beyond the archway, until Livia caught a glimpse of me and quickly stepped back. "Oh, Elena, I didn't hear you come in." I smiled. "That's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt." Adrian stood between us, and for a moment, he looked nervous. Just a flicker. Then he slipped back into character. "You're early." I walked into the room and sat down gracefully. I wanted to see how everything was going. After all, this wedding means a lot to me. They both froze. Good. Let them squirm. That night, I made copies of my engagement photos of Adrian and I smiling, kissing, laughing, and began leaving them in places Livia frequented. Slipped one into her purse, left one in her car's windshield wiper, mailed one anonymously to her workplace. Every glance she stole at Adrian during family dinners now came with a hint of panic, because I was no longer the clueless bride. I was the hunter. Meanwhile, I kept building my career. The firm offered me a permanent position, which I accepted. I rented a small apartment near the office, told Adrian it was a quiet space for me to focus on wedding planning. He didn't like it, but he let it go. I also started meeting new people, attending seminars, networking events, places Adrian wouldn't follow, and that's where I met Elias. Tall, quiet, gentle, everything Adrian wasn't. He was a neurologist, passionate about his work, a bit awkward with small talk, but sincere, refreshing, real. We struck up conversations that turned into dinners. At first, it was just nice to talk to someone who saw me, not just the idea of me. And then, something changed. He told me, "You smile, but your eyes always look like they're watching a storm rolling in." It was the most accurate thing anyone had ever said about me. Adrian began noticing the difference too. "You've been distant lately," he said one evening, after a gala. I poured myself a glass of wine and leaned against the window. "Have I?" He stepped behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. "We used to talk about everything." I turned to face him, still holding that soft, wifely smile. "We still can. But it's hard when your sister keeps interrupting." He flinched, just barely, but it was enough. The next day, Livia called to cancel a brunch she had planned with me. "No reason," she said quickly. "Just not feeling well." She was unraveling, and I was just getting started. The more they tried to keep their secret hidden, the more cracks began to form in their perfect little facade. A month before the wedding, Adrian's controlling nature crept back in, subtler this time, but unmistakable. He started calling me more often, showing up at my office unexpectedly with lunch, asking who I was texting. To outsiders, it looked like doting affection. But I knew better. It was panic, because I wasn't the same woman he once held under his thumb, and he could feel it slipping. One evening, we were walking through the wedding venue, an elaborate garden estate blooming with lilacs and roses. The planner was going over logistics, but Adrian wasn't paying attention. His eyes were on me. "You're not excited," he said quietly as we strolled through the garden alone. I turned to him, the wind catching my hair. "I am just tired." "Tired?" he echoed. "Tired of pretending." There it was, a truth wrapped in ambiguity. He frowned. "What do you mean by that?" I smiled and shook my head. "Forget it. I'm probably overthinking things." But he didn't forget. Later that week, he invited me to dinner at his family's estate. It was supposed to be an intimate affair, just him, his parents, and of course, Livy. She greeted me at the door in a flowing silk dress, cheeks flushed, eyes darting to Adrian before they settled on me. "Alina, you look lovely." "So do you," I replied, then added, "That dress wasn't it Adrian's favorite color?" Her smile faltered. His wineglass clinked against the edge of the table. No one else noticed, but to me, it was deafening. Dinner was uneventful, full of practiced pleasantries and forced laughter. But as I got up to leave, Livia followed me into the hallway. "Alina," she said, voice trembling. I turned to her slowly. Yes, she hesitated, then said, do you ever feel like Adrian's too much? Like he demands too much space? Double quotes as though the guilt was festering. I stepped closer and whispered gently, you know, Livia, I've always felt like there was something between you two. Something more than brother and sister. Her eyes widened in horror. Before she could respond, I smiled, patted her arm, and walked out, let her mind unravel itself. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony, legs curled beneath me, watching the stars. A soft knock came at my door. Elias. I hadn't invited him, but somehow, he knew. He didn't ask questions, just sat beside me, offering quiet presence. After a long silence, I finally whispered, have you ever trusted someone so completely, only to realize they saw you as a tool? Elias looked at me gently. Yes, but I learned that being used by the wrong people doesn't make you weak. It makes you wiser. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time in years, I felt safe. Adrian sensed it. He called me the next morning, voice sharp beneath the charm. Who's Elias? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, a friend. A male friend. I paused. Is that a problem? There was silence on the line. I don't like the way you've changed, he finally said. I do, I whispered. I finally like myself. Then I hung up. A week later, I received a text from Livia. Please, can we meet? Just us. I need to talk. The time had come, and I was ready. We met at a quiet CAF tucked in the corner of the city, far from the polished halls of Adrian's world. Livia sat alone at a table near the window, her eyes darting nervously at every passerby. She looked smaller than I remembered, fragile. But I knew better than to be fooled by appearances. I slid into the seat across from her, calm and composed. She didn't speak for a moment, just stirred her coffee in slow, distracted circles. I'm not here to fight, she finally said. I'm not here to play games, I replied softly. Her eyes lifted to mine, glassy and conflicted. Alina, I never meant to hurt you, the classic line. The go-to justification for every betrayal. I folded my hands on the table. Then what did you mean to do, Livia? Love him in secret? Lie to me until your guilt consumed you? Or maybe you just liked the attention of being his, what, soulmate? Forbidden fantasy. Her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't like that. Yes, it was, I said, my voice steady. I saw it. I lived it. And I died because of it. She flinched. I didn't know. No. You chose not to see, I said. You let him marry me. You stood beside me, smiled at our wedding, toasted our life together, all while knowing he was in love with you. Livia's voice cracked. He said he couldn't be with me, that it was wrong, that people would never accept it, and yet you still clung to him like he belonged to you, I said coldly. She covered her face with her hands. I didn't know what else to do. I leaned in, my voice dropping. Here's the thing, Livia. I don't hate you. I pity you. You never got to be his wife because the world wouldn't allow it. And I was his wife, and he never loved me. I stood, grabbing my purse. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for freedom. And I'm giving you both something neither of you had the courage to take. She looked up, confused. What do you mean? I smiled faintly. My blessing. I left her there, stunned in silence, as I walked out into the sunlight lighter than I'd ever felt. That night, Adrian showed up at my apartment. He was furious. What did you tell her? He barked as soon as I opened the door. Everything, I said calmly. and nothing. The truth doesn't need embellishment. He pushed his way inside, eyes wild. Are you trying to ruin us? No, I said. I'm freeing us. You don't want me, Adrian. You want her. Always have. He laughed bitterly. You think I can be with her? After all this? After what people would say? I met his eyes, expression unchanging. Then, maybe you should thought of that before you married me to cover it up. He stared at me like I was a stranger. And maybe, finally, I was. You were supposed to be mine, he whispered. I was never yours, I replied. You just wore me like a mask. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. And I stood there, free. 2 days later, I handed my resignation letter to the wedding planner. When she asked why, I simply said, because I found something better than a wedding. The next few weeks passed in a strange calm. Livia disappeared from public view. Adrian stopped calling, and I lived. I went to brunch alone, took solo weekend trips, learned how to sit with silence and let it soothe me, not haunt me. And Elias, he never pushed. He just showed up when I needed him most. He taught me how to laugh again, how to trust again. Slowly, carefully, he never asked about the past. He simply walked beside me as I built my future. And one evening, standing under the quiet sky, he asked me, Alina, what do you want? I looked up at him and whispered, to never belong to someone else again. He smiled. Then let's just belong to ourselves, together. By the time my supposed wedding date rolled around, there was no wedding, no white dress, no ring, no guests. Just silence. Adrian tried to save face publicly, told people the engagement ended mutually, that I wanted to focus on my career, that things just didn't work out, but silence speaks louder than words, and the people who had seen the cracks, who'd whispered behind their champagne glasses and traded glances during family dinners, they knew Adrian wasn't just left. He was abandoned, and that shattered the illusion he had worked so hard to build. I thought that would be the end of it, but men like Adrian don't let go, especially when their control slips through their fingers like water. One evening I came home from a gallery event with Elias to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart stopped. Elias stepped in front of me, tense. Stay behind me. He pushed the door open slowly. Everything was untouched, except for one thing. On my dining table sat a photo, one of my old engagement pictures, me and Adrian smiling. But someone had drawn an X over my face. My hands went cold. There was no note, no damage, just a single image, a message, not from a heartbroken man, from a man unraveling. I filed a police report, changed my locks, installed security cameras, but part of me wasn't surprised. Adrian had spent years controlling every part of his life, of mine, of Livia's. Now everything was slipping beyond his grasp, and when men like that lose control, they become dangerous. I hadn't heard from Livia since our last meeting, until she showed up at my work one afternoon, eyes red, makeup smudged, hands trembling. I need to talk to you, she whispered. We sat in a nearby park. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. He's not okay, she said. I waited. She continued. He came to my apartment last night. He was drunk. Said, if he couldn't have either of us, then no one should. He smashed a picture frame. Said he wished he'd never been adopted. That part struck me deep, because it meant Adrian wasn't just spiraling. He was cracking at the very root of himself. Do you still love him? I asked her. She looked away. I don't know. I think I was more in love with the idea of Someone choosing me, protecting me. I nodded slowly. You didn't deserve to be hidden. But neither did I. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Alina. And for the first time, I believed her. We both agreed to report Adrian's behavior separately, without telling him, but the damage was already done. 2 days later, Adrian showed up at a charity gala Elias and I were attending. I saw him across the ballroom, eyes bloodshot, expression vacant. He walked straight toward us. Alina, he said, voice low and slurred. You think you've won? Elias stepped protectively between us. You should leave. Adrian laughed bitterly. You think this man knows you, loves you? He doesn't know what you're made of. I looked him dead in the eye, and you never knew how strong I was until I left. Security escorted him out, but I could still feel his stare burning into my back. That night, I held Elias's hand a little tighter, and I realized it wasn't fear I felt anymore. It was pity. Adrian had destroyed everything he touched in his pursuit of a love he could never have, and now, all he had left was emptiness. I always believed closure came with silence, that once the pain stopped echoing, it meant healing had taken its place. But Adrian's voice still lingered like a curse. So when the police contacted me 2 weeks later, telling me he'd been detained after trespassing into Livia's apartment and attempting to confront her new fiancé, I knew this wasn't silence. It was the calm before the final storm. They said he was yelling nonsense, claiming she was being stolen from him, that she promised they'd be together. He even tried to hit the man she was dating. The neighbors heard everything. Police were called, and though no one was hurt, the entire incident made its way into society columns. Not directly, of course, but veiled enough that everyone knew. They just didn't say it out loud, because who wants to admit that the charming heir of a powerful family lost his mind over his adopted sister? The hospital he was taken to was private, expensive, and discreet, the kind of place families sent their broken sons to hide their shame. I didn't visit. Not at first. I kept living. Elias and I grew closer, laughing more, grieving less. He never asked for more than I could give, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't surviving. I was thriving. Then one afternoon, I received a letter. No return address, just my name, in sharp black ink. Inside was a single sentence. You said you gave your blessing. So why does it feel like a curse? There was no signature, but I knew who it was from, and I knew what I had to do. The facility was perched on a quiet hill, surrounded by towering oaks and peaceful gardens. It looked more like a wellness retreat than a psychiatric center. I checked in with the front desk. The nurse gave me a long, searching look before guiding me down a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. He doesn't speak much, she said. He just sits in the garden every day. I nodded. She left me there, and I walked alone into the garden. He was seated on a wooden bench beneath a willow tree, back to me, staring at the koi pond. His once perfect suit was wrinkled, hair longer, unkempt. He looked small, broken. I stood a few steps behind him and said softly, "You wrote me." He didn't turn around. "I thought I owed you one last truth," I continued. Still no movement. As I walked forward and sat beside him. For a long while, we just sat in silence. Then he whispered, "I never meant to fall in love with her." I looked at him. "But you did. And you used me to hide it." His eyes, bloodshot and hollow, met mine. "You were safe. You were the life I was supposed to have, and she." I asked, She was the life I wanted. A long breath escaped me. I don't hate you anymore, Adrian. I just don't feel anything. He looked away, pain flickering across his features. Do you love him? He asked quietly. Elias, I smiled softly. Yes, because he never tried to make me a secret or a shield. Adrian closed his eyes. Then maybe you really did win. No, I said. I didn't win. I survived. There's a difference. I stood slowly. I hope you find whatever peace you can, I whispered, and then I walked away. I never looked back. Outside, the wind was warm, soft against my skin. For the first time in 2 lives, I was truly free. Freedom, as it turns out, isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's quiet. It's the slow comfort of waking up without dread. It's walking down the street without a ghost at your heels. It's the kind of peace that slips into your bones so gently, you don't realize how tense you've been until you finally exhale. That's what my life had become. Not perfect, but mine. I moved into a new apartment, sunlit, small, full of windows and warmth. I filled it with plants I never used to trust myself to care for. I even adopted a cat. Her name's Opal because, like me, she looks fragile, but catches fire when the light hits just right. Elias helped me paint the walls one weekend, laughing. When we got more paint on ourselves than the ceiling, we weren't rushing. We weren't chasing any timeline. We were just existing together. I never thought love could be this soft, this simple. But after everything I'd been through, I realized simple isn't boring. It's safe. One rainy afternoon, I received a package. No return label. Inside was a thick envelope and a thumb drive. The envelope held legal papers, final dissolution of any remaining joint accounts, property, or lingering business ties with Adrian, and a short note. This is the last of it. Burn it if you want. Like Livia. The thumb drive. Security camera footage from the night Adrian had broken into her apartment. It showed him pacing, muttering, reaching for her fiancé's throat before police pulled him away. I didn't watch all of it. I didn't need to. Closure sometimes comes when you choose to stop reopening wounds. Months passed. The headlines faded. Adrian's family quietly distanced themselves. Livia moved abroad for a fresh start, and me. I was asked to speak at a conference for women in leadership. I shared my story, not the twisted details, but the emotional truth about silencing yourself to fit someone else's expectations, about reclaiming your voice. Afterward, a young woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. You don't know me, she said, but your story feels like mine. I smiled at her because I didn't know her. She was me years ago, trapped in a gilded lie, and now she was standing on the edge of freedom, just like I had. One evening, Elias and I stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The wind tangled my hair as I leaned into his side. He slipped something small and silver into my hand, a compass pendant, for wherever your heart leads, he said. It wasn't a ring. It wasn't a proposal. It was a promise. No chains. No conditions. Just trust, just choice. I closed my hand around it and whispered, thank you for never trying to save me, just standing beside me while I saved myself. He kissed my forehead. That's what love looks like to me. And maybe that's what this whole story was about. Not revenge, not justice, but rediscovery of my voice, of my worth, of the woman who bloomed from the ashes. The woman I used to be would waited her whole life for closure, would chased apologies, would bend herself backward to fix a love that was broken from the start, but not anymore, because rebirth isn't just about changing your path, it's about changing how you walk it. Months passed. One day, as I was walking out of a boutique after picking up a gift for a friend's baby shower, I saw a familiar figure across the street. It was Adrian's mother. She looked thinner, older. Her face still bore the refined elegance of high society, but her eyes carried exhaustion. Our eyes met. She crossed the street. "Alina," she said softly, offering a small, pained smile. "You look well." "I am," I replied calmly. She hesitated, searching for the right words. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I tilted my head. "Did you know about him and Livia?" Her lips parted, no denial, no confirmation. Just a pause. "Then," she whispered, "we thought it was just childhood closeness, that it would pass." I nodded slowly. "But it didn't?" "No," she said, voice heavy. "It didn't." She looked away, then back at me. "He's being moved to a longer-term facility abroad." Quietly, I said nothing. What could I say? Then she added, "You didn't deserve what he did to you." And in her voice, I heard something rare, genuine regret. I offered a quiet nod. "Thank you." And then I walked away, because there was nothing left to say. That night, I told Elias about the encounter. He listened, holding my hand. When I finished, he asked, "Do you regret meeting him?" Adrian, a name that once made my chest ache. I thought for a long moment before answering. "No," I said, "because I don't think I'd be who I am now without that pain, without that fall." Elias kissed my knuckles. "And who you are now is remarkable." I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since college. Page after page of truth poured out. Things I never said aloud. Things I'd hidden from even myself. And one day, I realized I wasn't writing for myself anymore. I was writing for others, for every woman who had ever been second in her own life. Elias encouraged me to turn those pages into something more. And within a year, my first book was published. The Blessing I Never Meant. It wasn't just about Adrian. It was about rebirth, boundaries. Becoming. It reached more people than I ever imagined. Letters poured in, messages, stories from strangers who now felt seen. My pain had become a map for others to find their way out of the dark, and that, to me, was the real victory. One evening, I hosted a small celebration for the book's release. Friends, mentors, women from my support group. Elias by my side. As I raised my glass, I looked around and realized this wasn't the life I was given. This was the life I chose, and that made all the difference. I used to believe that love was the only thing that could break you. Now I know better. Love can heal, love can liberate, but only when it's real. The years that followed weren't easy. Healing never is, but every scar on my heart became a lesson, a reminder that I was stronger than my past, stronger than Adrian's lies, stronger than the pain I thought would drown me. I never saw Adrian again after that last visit at the facility. His story faded from the headlines. His family moved on quietly, burying the shame, and me. I moved forward. Elias and I built a life together, not a fairy tale, but something honest. We learned how to love without losing ourselves. To trust without fearing betrayal. To find joy in the everyday moments that make life worth living. Sometimes, when the night is quiet and the stars are bright, I think back to the girl who stood frozen in that doorway, the girl who died that rainy night, and I smile, because she's no longer lost, she's found. If you're watching this, Maybe you're standing where I once stood, trapped in a story someone else wrote for you, feeling like your voice is just an echo. I want you to know you can write your own ending. You can choose your own path. You are not your past, you are the author of your future. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and your happiness is worth fighting for. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.